and welcome to the second episode of the Joshlin Smith trial wrap. I am Nasiphi.
And I'm Mnisi.
It's been 4 weeks of intense testimony and evidence as we've witnessed the criminal trial unfold in Saldanha, diving deeper into the disappearance of 6-year-old Joshlin Smith. This week, we've seen explosive details that have further illuminated the timeline and the key players involved.
In today's episode, we'll take you through the most significant moments and revelations from the conclusion of the key state witnesses' testimony to shocking new insights provided by the lead investigator.
But before we go into those details, let's first take a look at how this week unfolded as the key state witness concluded her cross-examination.
As week 4 of the trial looking into the disappearance of then 6-year-old Joshlin Smith in the Western Cape High Court sitting in Saldanha, key state witness Lourentia Lombaard concluded her 9-day testimony and cross-examination, where her evidence in chief was tested. Lombaard admitted that she lied in the first statement she made to police in March 2024 after her arrest. She then said her confession statement was the truth, but the defense picked up discrepancies in her confession and evidence in chief. After the 4th week and last incident when Lombaard fell ill on the witness stand, Judge Nathan Erasmus voiced his frustration with her. Erasmus also made it known to Lombaard how crucial her evidence was, as the accused of facing life imprisonment if convicted for kidnapping and human trafficking. It's Monday morning and concerned residents from various churches in Saldanha gather in prayer ahead of the trial entering its 4th week. The group has been meeting religiously since the start of the trial, hoping for divine intervention and that the truth will be revealed.
Maar wat ons agtergekom het, die Here wys vir ons as kinders van die Here. Hier is 'n stryd, hier's 'n mag agter hierdie hele saak. En ons het gevoel ons moet vir die regsbank, vir die geregsdienaars en die besonders vir Judge Nathan Erasmus moet ons besonders bid. Want dit is nie die wysheid van die wêreld wat hom gaan help in hierdie saak nie, maar is die wysheid van die Here. En ons kan as 'n klein groepie mense weet ons wat die Here kan doen. En dit is die rede hoekom ons hierdie gebedsessie begin het en ons het toestemming gevra. Ons wou so graag om die gebou beweeg.
As the trial continues, key state witness Lourentia Lombaard is under intense scrutiny. The defense has picked up discrepancies in the statements made by Lombaard, particularly regarding her interaction with Detective Constable Refilwe Sekgobe the day after Joshlin's disappearance.
Why did you lie under oath? But you didn't tell Sergeant Sekgobe that you were scared.
I didn't tell her.
You made her to believe that what you were telling her is the truth. And as a result, she continued with her statement. Why did you fool her?
I didn't vertrou nie en was nie ek het van vertrou nie. Ek het die hele waarheid vir haar sê nie.
I didn't tell the truth.
You knew the time you were giving her your statement that you were lying.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Lombaard admitted to fabricating details in her initial statement, a revelation that has left the defense questioning the credibility of her testimony.
Voor Ayanda weer toe gaan ek en Ayanda gepraat oor die kos van vanmiddag.
Before Ayanda went to work, myself and Ayanda spoke about the food for the afternoon.
If what you are telling the court is the truth, why did you tell this court then that when you left your house in that morning, you went to ask food for your kids from Kelly, if Ayanda was going to provide for you?
Ek het myself sê ek gaan daar by Kelly sê en gaan kos vra vir my kinders.
I told myself that I'm going to Kelly's house and ask food for my children.
You know why you are making all these unnecessary discrepancies in your evidence?
Yeah, my lord.
No, my lord.
Because you are lying.
Further, Lombaard's credibility was called into question when she failed to inform authorities of crucial information in the initial hours after Joshlin's disappearance.
You agree with me, your first opportunity was the night the cops arrived and the search for Joshlin began.
That's correct, my lord.
That's correct.
And you did not take up that opportunity.
It was the first opportunity, not on Sunday,
the 18th, when she became aware of the plan, to reach out. Then, having slept on it, the next morning, when Kelly was gone, so let's accept she might have been under the influence of Kelly or scared of Kelly, because she said she was hesitant. There's another opportunity. Kelly's not there. She's been told that they must keep Joshlin for 2 o'clock. To go to somebody and say, they're going to take this child at 2 o'clock. Then, instead of going home and buying tuck, all of those potential opportunities. But the first opportunities where she encountered the authorities was on that night.
You did not say anything to the police officer?
Nothing, my lord.
Lombard was pressed further.
Miss Lombard, the longer I sit here, the more surprises I get. You knew the search is senseless, according to your evidence. Not so?
That's correct, my lord.
So why would you think the search is important?
Want soos ek die mense gesien het, die mense soek na Joshlin en was baie mense gewees, dis hoe ek nog gesê het, dit was important gewees. Maar ek het myself gesê, nee, ek gaan nie vir Joshlin gaan soekie, want jy het nog nie die geld vir my gegee nie.
As I said, my lord, I could see the number of people looking, searching for Joshlin. That was important. And at that stage, I decided I'm not going because Kelly hasn't given me the money yet.
Lombard's evidence in chief was once again tested.
So if the window is broken, it would be easier for the person standing outside to hear. Do you agree?
That's correct, my lord.
When was the first time you told anybody about the broken window?
Dit was die tyd gewees dat ek saam met kaptein Lombard en Ibe van Donder.
When I was with Captain Lombaard and Advocate Van Donder.
That was in October, between the 11th and the 16th of October 2024. Why was it important to tell him about the breaking of the window?
Want ek het daai dag wat kaptein Lombard na my toe kom het om my verklaring af te gee, het ek vir myself gesê, ek gaan die waarheid, alles gaan ek praat.
Because on that day when Captain Lombaard came to me, I said that I'm going to speak the whole truth.
And I'll explain to you why I'm asking the question. It may be, or maybe not, that at the end of this case, when the advocates are going to argue their case, it might be suggested the reason why the broken window entered the story 7 months after the confession was to strengthen your case, that you could hear what was being said from the inside of the house. What do you think I should do with a submission like that? Because you were the one that says, I didn't tell them in March, I only told them in October.
Want soos ek gesê het, ek het gevoel in hy tyd dat kaptein Lombard, ek gevoel ek gaat maar nou dit net sê.
Because at the time when I spoke to Captain Lombard, that was the time I felt that I want to speak about it.
Despite facing days of grueling cross-examination by the defense, Lombard remained firm in his statements, implicating the child's mother at the center of the plan surrounding Joshlin's disappearance.
If I understood your evidence correctly, the main player was Miss Smith. She came up with a plan and she first told Mr. Paulus Buddha, whilst you were standing outside and you overheard this plan. Who was the person that said you guys must keep quiet and go along with the plan?
Kiali.
The way I understand it from what you heard, he wasn't really interested in the beginning. He did nothing more but to go along and to help with the cover-up on the Monday. Furthermore, you can't say anything that he was involved in the disappearance.
That's correct, my lord.
That's correct, my lord.
Turning to Mr. Van Rijn, on the face of it, it looks as if he was only there by chance. Like yourself, he didn't say much, he didn't do anything. The only thing that you can say was he was prepared to accept his 1,200 rand at some stage.
That's correct, my lord.
That's correct, my lord.
As Smith's defense flipped the script on Lombaard, more questions were raised as to who the real mastermind behind Joshlin's disappearance was. There's now a bold new theory suggesting it was Lombaard who orchestrated the disappearance. The defense contends that Lombaard is actively protecting the father of her children, Ayanda, shielding him from the truth, and that she herself played a central role in Joshlin's fate.
On the evening of the 19th, when she realized that her child Joshlin was missing, she was informed by accused number 2, you were the last person to be seen with Joshlin.
That is liens.
It is lies.
I'm further instructed that she then came to your house that evening, but did not find you there.
Sy lieg.
It is lying.
It was only Ayanda with the children, and he could not explain your whereabouts.
Sy jok.
It is lying.
I'm instructed that a possible reason that you are implicating her is to save your own skin. She believes that it was you and Ayanda who were the mastermind and who had committed this offense.
Dit is die waarheid. Dit is sy en Boeta.
Not true, my lord. It's a Buddha.
And that is also one of the main reasons why Ayanda suddenly left. Accused number 3 will deny that she acted in a common purpose with any other person or co-accused or with you.
Sy het dit gedoen.
She did it.
Lombaard denied the allegations that suggested that she's protecting her family.
It was put to you that all that you are telling the court is just lies. Are you just lying and falsely implicating them?
Nee, my lord.
No.
The Wrens that used drugs in February 2024 and agreed to do this for money. Is that the same Wrens that is sitting here today?
Sy is nie met dieselfde persoon nie.
She's not the same person anymore.
Why do you say that?
Want ek het vir my hand voor my borst toe sê ek vir myself, ek is nou klaar met alles, ek gaan my 'n beter lewe, gaan ek nou begin staan.
I put my hand in front of my chest, my lord, and said, now I've had enough. I'm going to start a new life for myself, a better life for myself.
Lombaard suddenly struggled to maintain composure as defense lawyer Ranesh Sivnarain was in the process of questioning her about alleged inconsistencies in her statement. She requested an adjournment, citing she was not feeling well. After 9 days on the witness stand, court had to abruptly adjourn for the 4th time.
You gave us 2 reasons as to why the statement you made to the lady with the white hair is not reliable. And those 2 were that, firstly, you did not trust the lady who was recording your statement. And the second one was that you were under the influence. And you were then questioned, and it was confirmed that you had only taken or consumed any drugs maybe 2 or 3 days prior to that day. Are both those reasons correct?
That's correct, my lord.
That statement that I'm referring to now, did you forget anything?
My lord, kan ek nog 'n bietjie afstaan en my kop vol 'n bietjie duiselig?
It's not the first time when it came to crunch time that the witness became unwell. But I'm not going to have my court time being manipulated. Not by counsel, not by witnesses, by nobody. So I'm going to give an opportunity for the witness.
As the trial continues, Lombaard remains a central figure in the trial, with a lot banking on her testimony.
Don't speculate and tell us what you think. Tell us what you know. It's important for both yourself and for Mr. Sivnarain's client. I'm going to remind you again, if your evidence is correct, the accused, but particularly Ms. Smith, faces life imprisonment. If you don't listen to the questions, and ultimately it affects your credibility, it might also affect my decision at the end of the case, whether to discharge you from the charges and grant you the indemnity.
Stay with us as we explore more of this high-stakes trial. We'll be back with more after the break. The conclusion of Lombaard's testimony opened the door for the lead investigator, Detective Captain Wesley Lombaard to take the stand. Lombaard provided a detailed account of the investigation, from the initial stages of looking into Joshlin's disappearance to the early morning arrests of the 3 accused in March of last year, nearly 2 weeks after the child mysteriously vanished from her Middelpos home on February 19th. Lombaard also revealed disturbing details about outside influence in the investigation, including the involvement of well-known politicians, community leaders, and social media users, factors that could have jeopardized the integrity of the case and put Joshlin's life in danger. Things took another unexpected turn during the testimony, with accusations from Jacqueline and Stefano, who claimed they were victims of police brutality and that their confessions had been coerced.
The disappearance of Joshlin quickly captured public attention, with social media posts and news reports amplifying the urgency of the search. Lombaard testified he soon realized that the attention surrounding the case was both a blessing and a curse.
Op daardie stadium, ik was niet op TikTok geweest. Ik was niet op TikTok geweest. Nee. Ik heb maar gehoord dat die mensen die TikTok-video's wil wijzen daar. Daar is baie mensen wat geweest het. Insluitend Nathan McKenzie. Wat duidelijk gesê het dat die politie is onbevoegd, die politie het nie resources nie, die ondersoek het gestop.
There was a lot of on TikTok, my lord, but I was not on TikTok, including Nathan McKenzie. And there were a lot of people talking about the police doesn't have resources, Wisconsin has stopped. Police are incapable.
Onbevoegd is. En nie die nodige resources het nie, maar
they don't have the necessary resources.
Die informatie wat ons ontvang het, vir ons gearriveer het, soos Luitenant-Kolonel Shabola gesê het, was daar baie resources hier gewees van die begin af om te help en soek na Joshlin.
But from the information we had, my lord, there was a lot of resources made available to use in the search of Joshlin.
Wat daardie houding van die gemeenskap het dinge baie bemoeilik.
After the attitude of the community, my lord, things became very difficult.
Ons kon nie deurdring dat ons lekker kon sit met die gemeenskap en gesels om te hoor wat gaan aan, hoe kan julle vir ons help?
We could not get through to them as to speak to them nicely and how can they assist us.
Verdagtes, mense wat regte waar in organiseerde crime of enige verdagte mense kyk na social medias en hulle kyk na wat die polisie doen.
Suspects in organized crime would, through the social media, would see as to what the police would be doing.
Die polisie doen hulle deursoekings.
Then when the police do their searches,
en die gemeenskap plaas die goed live.
And then this, what the police do would be put live.
Kan hulle die lewe van die victim in gevaar stel.
That can result in putting the life of the victim in danger.
While the investigation remained in the public eye, it also led to a breakdown of trust between the community and the police, with some locals taking matters into their own hands and conducting their own investigations.
Ayanda en Rens. It was the 26 of the 27th.
I think it was the 26th or the 27th of that week.
Maar daai spesifieke aand het die gemeenskap Ayanda se huis bestolen.
That night, the community then attacked Ayanda's home.
Daar was van Ayanda se goed gesteel geweest.
Some of Ayanda's belongings were stolen.
Volgens hom was daar toe, ek kan nie onthou sê hy was geslaan geweest of dan nie, maar ek weet hulle albei was bang geweest.
According to him, my lord, I don't remember whether were they assaulted, but was he assaulted? But I understand that both of them were scared.
Van die gemeenskaplede wat daardie event bygewoon het toe 'n TikTok video gemaak en uitgestuur op TikTok.
Some of these members who attended that gathering, my lord, made out a TikTok video and then sent it around.
Ek dink dit was die dag na dit.
I think it was the day after that.
Of 2 dae na dit waar Ayanda teen sy wil vervoer gewees het na die polisiestasie toe met 'n bakkie.
When Ayanda was transported against his will in a bucket to the police station.
En dit het die vrees vir daai huisgesin verder opgejaag dat hulle lewe in gevaar is.
That would make it more difficult for the freedom of those people that their lives were in danger.
This is clearly on the face of the police work.
Ja. Daar is twee sake, Ayanda twee sake gemaak.
There were two cases was opened by Ayanda.
My verstande is dat daai twee dossiere nog onder investigation is.
My understanding is that those two cases are still under investigation.
With a keen interest from the public, the little girl's mother started to become concerned about her social image, especially ahead of a meeting with former police minister Bheki Cele, as the case began attracting widespread media coverage.
En in die loop van daai oggend voor die minister gearriveer het.
During that morning before the minister arrived,
ek kan onthou ek het van die boardroom uitgestap.
I remember I was walking from the boardroom
Deur die CSC
through the CSC
na die parkering na my voertuig.
To my vehicle in the parking area.
Toe hoor ek net iemand roep vir my meneer.
Then I heard someone calling me sir.
Toe was dit Kelly geweest.
It was Kelly.
Ek kan onthou Kelly het so donkergroen rok aangehad.
I can remember she was wearing a dark green dress.
Die hare was uitgeblou.
Blown out hair.
Sy het mooi gelyk.
She appeared beautiful.
En ons het toe maar gegroet en verbygaan en sy sê vir my meneer in soveel woorde ek is famous, Joshlin het my famous gemaak.
Sir, I'm famous, Joshlin made me famous.
Ek wou net gelag en gesê ja, jy lyk nogal mooi.
I just laughed and said, but you look nice.
En dis was my gesels met Kelly gestop daai oggend.
That's when the conversation with me and Kelly stopped.
In the search for Joshlin, Lombaard says they explored various avenues upon learning about some of the activities the mother was involved in.
Die inligting wat ons bekom het was dat
the information that we received, my lord,
dat sy deelname gehad het aan prostitusie in Saldanha.
She had a contribution in prostitution here in Saldanha.
Ons het uitgevind van dames.
We found out of ladies
wat op daardie stadium moontlik saam met haar deelname gehad het in dit.
With the ladies who at that stage might have had also contribution with her.
Ons het 'n onderhoud met hulle gevoer.
We conducted an interview with them.
En tot 'n mate het hulle dit bevestig.
Up to a certain point, they confirmed it, my lord.
Die rede hoekom ons dit vir hulle gesoek het en met hulle gesels het was
the reason for us looking for them and ask them
om te kyk of daar miskien 'n moontlike rede is wat iets gebeur het in daai spesifieke lyn wat kon gelei het tot Joshlin se verdwyning.
If there anything might have happened in that situation which could have led to Joslin's getting lost, vanishing.
In that line.
Die lyn van prostitusie.
In that lane of prostitution. If anything might have happened.
The investigating officer's testimony revealed startling details about the little girl's mother as investigations unfolded.
To my surprise,
het sy aan my gesê dat
she said to me,
Joshlin nie meer in Saldanha Bay is nie.
That Joshlin is not in Saldanha Bay anymore.
Sy moet aangaan met haar lewe.
She wants to proceed with her life.
Van sy het nog 2 ander kinders.
Because she's got other 2 children.
Sy moet aangaan met haar lewe.
Proceed with her life. She got other 2 children.
Lombard also shed light on the troubling behavior of the accused, particularly the little girl's mother. He testified that Kelly appeared unwilling to fully cooperate with the police efforts to locate her missing daughter when Lombard requested supplementary affidavits.
Met beide Boeta en Kelly.
It was clear to me with both the interviews with both Kelly and Buta
dat hulle nie daai gaan die Engelse woord gebruik willingness het om alles te doen om te help in die soek na Joshlin.
They did not have the willingness, my Lord, to do everything in the search for Joshlin.
Ek kon nie verstaan dat Buta wat die vaderfiguur is vir Joshlin in die huis.
I could not understand Buta as a father figure to Joshlin in the house.
Was nie bereid om te antwoord oor sy verhouding met Joshlin nie.
He was not prepared as to give an answer about his relationship with Joshlin.
Observing the couple, Lombard said it was clear that Kelly had a dominant role in their relationship, and he quickly deduced that she wore the pants.
Met Kelly se onderhoud,
with Kelly's interview,
wat vir my uitgestaan het was dat
which became to me important or apparent was that
Kelly tot 'n mate beskerm vir Buta.
Up to a certain
measure. To a certain measure.
To a certain measure that she was protecting Buta.
En dat Kelly die stem is in daai verhouding.
She was the voice in this relationship.
Detective Lombard highlighted significant discrepancies in the initial statements given by the accused, including Apollos, Smith, and her son Requin. The red flag went up on the details provided by the mother and her boyfriend, especially when compared to other testimonies.
Buta se verklaring lê.
In Buta's statement,
hy het 2 uur in die middag het hy van Joshlin gesien.
At 2 o'clock after we saw Joshlin.
Dis die tyd wat sy weggeloop het van die huis af.
That's the time when she walked away from the house.
Requin se verklaring sê,
Requin's statement states the following.
Dat sy ma huis toe gekom.
He said his mother came home,
klaar geëet,
finished eating,
terug werk toe gegaan.
Went back to work.
Toe het Buta vir hom en vir Joshlin kos gegee.
Buta gave him and Joshlin food.
Die vraag wat ek vir myself gevra het was,
the question I asked myself, my Lord, was,
watter 2 kinders was by die huis toe Kelly 30, 50 by die huis gekom het?
Which 2 children were at the house at 13:50 when Kelly went home?
Sy noem dat Jacqueline Buta nie by die huis gewees het.
She mentioned that Jacqueline, that is Buta, was not at the house.
Maar Jacqueline sê hy was daar toe ook.
But Jacqueline himself said he was there.
In March 2024, the lead investigator rounded up people of interest for interrogation. It was nearly 2 weeks after Joshlin disappeared. Smith, Apollos, and their friend Van Rijn were taken to Sea Border Police compound on the 4th of March and kept separately.
Ek die boodskap gekry dat hulle 2 oor die waarheid praat.
That's when, whilst not being long down there, that's when I received the information or that they wanted to speak the truth.
Dit het toe gevolg waar ek vir hulle, so ek voorheen verduidelik het, hulle regte aan hulle verduidelik het.
As I said earlier, I explained the rights to them.
Hulle steeds gevolhou dat hulle die waarheid wil gesels.
They still maintain that they wanted to speak the truth.
Hulle was bereidwillig om 'n verklaring af te gee.
They wanted to give a statement.
Die tyd toe ek dit vir hulle twee sê, en vir hulle sê ons gaan vir hulle inneem die klagte van kidnapping en almal daai.
When I told them that now you're going to detain them for the charge of kidnapping and the other.
Stefano en Buta het genoem dat ons vir Kelly moet vra oor die verdwyning van Joshlin.
The talk was about Buta and Stefano saying that we must ask Kelly about the vanishing of Joshlin.
Ek sê toe aan haar dat Buta hulle sê ons moet vir jou vra.
I said to Buta, them said we must ask you.
En sy het onmiddellik begin skree en aangaan en vloek en skel.
She immediately screamed, carried on swearing.
Soon, things quickly took a turn when they shifted their attention to Kelly.
Wat sy toe begin skree het, was dit sy geuiter dat hoe kan Boeta
And
sê
all the words, how can Buddha?
ek het toe van haar gesê
And I said to her,
jy worry oor Boeta,
you worry yourself out, you worry about Buddha,
maar jy worry nie oor Joshlin nie.
but you don't worry about Joshlin.
Ek het 'n mistake gemaak om dit vir haar te gesê het.
I made a mistake by telling that to her.
Van toe begin die skel en die volume van die stem het gestyg en aangegaan.
When she started swearing, the volume of her voice increased.
Sy het iets genoem so, wat moet sy maak, my kind is weg.
She mentioned something like, what should I do? My child is gone.
As the court concluded the fourth week of the trial, it entered in a trial within a trial on Friday. The process is aimed at determining whether alleged confessions made by Jacqueline Apollos and Stefano van Rijn last year March should be allowed as evidence in their main trial. The outcome of the admissibility of the statements could have far-reaching implications for both Apollos and van Rijn.
I had an opportunity to go through the alleged statement thoroughly, and I have perused it with fine comb. On my perusal, what I've realized is that the statement is not an unequivocal admission of guilt that is required by law.
So it's not a confession?
It's not a confession. If I argue that it was an admission, even then I will argue that it was only an admission of fact admitted under the following circumstances.
Okay.
My client is not the author of the admission. The admission was prescribed to him. That means he never made those admissions freely and voluntarily. He was tortured, therefore it cannot be said that he made them under sober senses or sound mind, and he was unduly influenced.
And this undue influence, and it also amounts to duress, is that, can we place it at a location and time? Is it also at the sea border police?
At the sea border, my lord, after he was beaten, his private parts being pinched at Jacobs Bay Ocean.
Okay.
He was taken then to sea border officers.
Advocate Fani Harmsa, on behalf of Apollos, described how his client was allegedly tortured while in police custody.
Keeping that vision in your mind, somebody sitting on his backside, on the floor, knees pulled up, arms over, cuffed in the front. They stuck an aluminium or some metal rod. Then this metal rod or aluminium rod, as he thought it was pushed in from the one side, over the arm, the right or left arm, whichever side it came on first, over the arm and under the legs. One member took hold of the one end of the pipe and they raised him in the air. He was indeed threatened. If he says anything to anybody about having been assaulted, he would suffer more punishment and torture, even death. That was probably not the first time that it has been done to an accused person by officials.
Apollos, through his lawyer, claimed the torture continued as he was hoisted in the air.
So his instructions are, the first time, couldn't breathe, they take the bag off. And while the black bag is over his head, they were hitting with batons on the head, on his feet, on his hand, and he says it was extremely painful as well as he couldn't breathe. He has said what he knows. Then the process starts again. Black bag over the head, and he can't breathe, and they beat him.
The lead investigator, who was called to the stand on Friday, denied witnessing any such abuse.
Did you see any patterns or a pipe, like an aluminium pipe or something?
Nedelagbare aluminium pipe van daai kantore het net stoele in en tafel.
No, my lord, because the vet offices only has chairs and a table.
Ek het geen wapens, stokke, pale, eisters, soos pale gesien nie.
I didn't see any weapons like rods or poles.
As ook 'n swart sak.
And also not a black bag.
There was no mention of poles, Captain Lombaard.
Wanneer Armse het gesê sy kliënt se kop was toegemaak met 'n sak of 'n swart sak. Toe was sy kliënt met 'n batten oor die voete en die kop geslaan en lagbare
in die hande.
In die hande. Ek het my gevisualiseer dat nou sit ek hang nou hier bo, my kop is toe, hoe weet ek hulle slaan my met 'n batten? Terwyl ek hang.
I visualized the scenario painted by Mr. Armse that his client was the bag over his head and then was hit with the baton on the hands, head and feet. How do a person make out as to what that the person must be beaten with a baton?
En my ondervinding, as toe ons as kinders gewees het gespeel het met swart sakke, kon ek nie die swart sakke sien het.
In my experience as a child when we were playing using black bags, I could not see through a black bag.
Captain Lombaard, I know you're an experienced police officer, but you're not a doctor.
Ek het nooit voorgegee dat ek 'n dokter is. Ek het wel gesê uit my ondervinding.
I never said that I am a doctor, my lord, but I said according to my experience.
Welcome back. Let's get some legal analysis now on this week's evidence.
Ian, thank you so much for your time once again and for joining us this week. I want us to start by looking at, this continued line of questioning by the defense, particularly when it comes to the 204 witness, Lombaard, who they continuously, push on the fact that she fabricated certain things in her initial statement that was given to the police. Clearly, the issue here boils down to credibility for the defense.
Correct. The whole purpose, let me just briefly explain. The Section 204 witness is provisionally granted immunity from any of the charges. Now, for that immunity to be granted, she has to make allegations that are pertinent that will enable a conviction. If one can, the strategy of the defense is to undermine the credibility in total of that immunity-based witness, to not only cost her the immunity, but also in that way, if she's deemed not to be telling the truth, it creates reasonable doubt in respect of anything that she said and the purpose of it, that she was just trying to make things up to get a deal. That is entirely what the defense's strategy is going to be. The more you can undermine the credibility, the more the presiding judge will be inclined not to grant the immunity, and in that way, it's open testimony for to be cross-examined and impunged and for testimony to be impugned.
And one of the things that the judge will have to look at the end, of course, of this case is if Lombaard was indeed lying, why exactly would she be lying? So the motive behind, number one, wanting to turn state witness, but also the motive if she lied behind the lie itself, right?
Not so much. It basically automatically, if you have an immunity, you're bound to tell the truth. You're bound to make the statements which will go ahead and save you and basically undermine and undermine the other witnesses or the other accused. So it's a deal bargain. Now, if they can go ahead, the whole thing is, if the motive behind her lying would just simply be to get her to save herself and to avoid what and consequences that would affect her if she were also convicted. At this point, if her immunity stands, irrespective of her involvement, she will not face the same consequences, and her immunity will kick in insofar as being agreed by the National Prosecuting Authority. So the whole motive is basically to save herself, and they're going to say that her motive on saving herself is throwing us under the bus with fabrications and lies.
But also, the fabrication would have to be in respect of the material stuff, the things that really matter and are at the center of this case, right?
Correct. It all relates to the issue of the charges themselves. It's not surrounding issues of historical aspect. It surrounds the crime itself and what they say she's lying about in the commission of the crime. And that crime is linked to the issue of the human trafficking and the kidnapping aspect, and obviously the sale of the child for the alleged amount of money. Now, if that is the only thing that they can go ahead that the deal applies to, not historical. If she's been involved in any other crimes, those will not go ahead and be introduced. It's strictly in respect of this crime itself.
And what seems to come across is that she stands firm on implicating the mother, which is primarily something that speaks directly to the charges.
The mother, the point of this entire criminal trial is basically the involvement of Kelly Smith. And the subsequent other people involved as co-conspirators. But she's the mother of the child. She's the one who basically also there's issues of lying and making false statements to the police and not making statements timeously, and certain submissions that she made in her statements that they say could be false and don't make sense in the bigger scheme of things. So that is all that she is the crux of the crime. If they can convict her, everybody else gets convicted alongside her, but she is the main, if one could say, role player in this entire matter.
And we see there seems to be a version that is now preferred by the defense, in that Lombard is the one that actually orchestrated this disappearance. This is a version that they would need to sustain and sustain throughout the trial, because again, it will be weighed against everything that the court has been hearing, but even the statements that were given by the accused themselves.
Precisely. You know what? This is very convenient. And this is the thing when it comes to making statements, why there's always the Miranda of rights and the Constitution read to a person of the right to remain silent. When they made their statements and then decided not to make their statements, those were deemed to have been the truth. Now they're coming up with a new version, which kind of actually hurts their defense, because you either are involved or not involved. A crime like this isn't like, for example, a self-defense or another rebuttal type of defense or an insanity defense. She said she did not, from the initial charges and the initial disappearance, Kelly Smith always denied any involvement whatsoever. Now she's going ahead and saying she wasn't involved, but blaming somebody else. And now she's accusing somebody else of being the kingpin of being involved. You can't come up with that defense if you're not already involved in the commission of an offense in one way or another. So I just think it's legal bolstering to try and create some sort of doubt that she was under some alternative influence to perhaps mitigate her potential risk on the conviction of kidnapping and human trafficking.
Because again, some of the questions that will be asked at a later stage is, if you knew that this is the person that was behind the disappearance of your child, why wasn't it mentioned in your statement? Why did you not tell the police who were engaged with you at length, right?
The problem is that it's a very weak defense, especially in light of all the parties involved. And this is a major aspect because that's exactly one of the questions. Why did you not engage the police? And the fact that her own sister is a police official and subsequent to the kidnapping and the disappearance, that the sister gave evidence and has never once addressed these versions of Lombard being the main person involved, and that her sister was under the influence. That says a lot. You see, if you're going to place a version before the court, it's got to be placed to all witnesses. You can't cherry pick which witnesses in order to try and undermine their credibility. It's, how can one say, it's a little bit like almost a flatulence defense of, I'm denying, you denied it, so you supplied it. That type of mentality. That is what they're in essence engaging. They should have dealt with that with the other previous witnesses as well as with the police, and when there's been the forensic evidence also being dealt with to undermine in the judge's mind the person's immunity, the person's guilt before they got up on the stand and exercised their 204 right to immunity. So this is a defense that's not going to meet, that's treading water.
We also saw the investigator take the stand this week, talking about the investigations, where they looked, but also seemingly raising a concern about the interference of community members, politicians, and social media users in this particular investigation. Shortly at the end, one of the questions that the investigator will face are questions around the credibility of this investigation. If at this stage you're already admitting that there were some interferences in this investigation.
Whereas when it comes to police, when it comes to interferences in a investigation of this nature, it also needs to then look at what evidence may have been compromised. Not just the fact of that there has been the interference, that there's been a consequence of an interference. So basically, if one could go ahead, for me to simplify, especially for the viewers, is an example of that is when you get an interference, like for example, you had Kate McKenzie saying he wants to make this a priority and helping with helping and getting involved. That's one thing. That's not a direct interference that will compromise. The interference comes when people come and suddenly start putting clothes and phoning up saying, I found blood-stained clothes that could be Joshlin's, and I found it here on this part of the beach and all of that. When they start constructing evidence that can compromise it and wasting investigators' time on false tips. That's the difference of it. I don't think it reached the stage that the investigation was compromised to the fact that there was false evidence that was provided to the police, but mainly more from the case of the investigation being rushed, if one could say, and that may have placed them under excessive amount of pressure to perform within a shortened period of time, and that may have forced them to almost cut corners, if one could say. And now he's saying, well, it may have been compromised by external interference simply as a reason because there was all the cost-cutting measures and the investigative shortcuts that may have been taken.
And let's take a look now at the trial within a trial. Here we're dealing with admissibility, crucial evidence, but obviously there is the reason why we're in a trial within a trial is because there is an objection to these confessions being admitted as evidence, and the claim there is that there was coercion. Right. So in order for the court to determine whether these are admissible or not, they would need to then go through this process of a trial within a trial. But talk to us briefly about the legal requirements for the admission of this kind of evidence, because we're also seeing it in other cases. We saw it in the Senzo case, where there was a ruling that the confessions were done freely, voluntarily, and without any undue influence.
When it comes to statements, you see you've got two different aspects. You've got admissibility of physical evidence, which is things like photographs, pictures, items, and then you have admissibility in regards to confessions and statements. What it basically is it's, and I can just briefly explain both of those just to give an indication that suddenly there's a piece of clothing or a weapon that's found with some blood. There, it's the admissibility of where was it found, what was the chain of evidence, how was it circulated, how was it tested, where did one go ahead and find it? If it miraculously just appears in the middle of almost like a treasure chest dropped from heaven, then that's from a physical evidence admissibility. With the coercion or possible influence on statements, that is more of an inquiry as to what took place when the statements were given. That one must take a look whether or not they were properly recorded, whether or not they were even recorded, that who was present in the room, because technically coercion is when you have a gun against your head and they are saying to you, if you don't go ahead, if you don't sign this statement, we're going to beat you up, or we're going to go murder your children. That's type of coercion. So there has to be a strong influence that forces a person to make that decision to sign that statement. But unfortunately, they're also becoming introduced. This is becoming a willy-nilly type of introduction as well, where people confess, they make allegations. They, oh no, I didn't mean it that way because I was under pressure, or I was under the influence of something, or there were all these people around me and I was nervous and I had to say this. That's where it comes. So they actually will look at the conditions and the circumstances in which that statement was made. If it's just them and the investigating officer, and things are recorded, and the statement, if one could almost say, is nebulous in what it says, or to the extent of the confession of I was here when opposed to I was there. You're not going to just simply plead guilty and say I did X, Y, and Z, and no, now I was never even at the place. And that's where people get this idea from watching too many movies.
That was our legal analyst helping us unpack this week's evidence, and that's where we leave it at. Catch us again next week as we unpack the upcoming week's evidence. Until then, bye-bye.